Dearest gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the town. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighborhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, whose current chapter of her story takes place in Ohio.
Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
Dearest listeners, be prepared. Tosh has extensive notes today, and being pragmatic, we believe we will only be talking Hawkins Ball, the Innovation Ball. We have several love interest intros to get through, and we don't want to leave a detail out. We learned Francesca was the kid the family was always losing. She's just as crafty as Colin. Violet's attention is being drawn to a handsome face, though, and she learns this creates a sticky wicket between her and Lady Danbury. And we'll discuss again the Queen's choices for suitors. And is there a plot hole that creates some cognitive dissonance? As I said, there is a lot to get.
I believe that Hawkins Ball, with how many notes I have and our ability to tangent, I do believe that this will be a two-parter, which will conclude once we get through this episode, and the next will conclude our episode 3 side stories. And we finally get to move on to episode 4, which is probably my favorite episode of the entirety of season 3. We get beautiful balls. We get rich Greek
Symbolism.
Symbolism and myths kind of twined through the episode. We get a lot of insights into the characters and their desires. We get to see a lot of those relationships that we see in this episode kind of coming together a little bit more. So episode 4, I'm really I love how I pretend like I'm not just looking forward to the carriage scene. So I'm like, all these other things. Oh yeah, and there's a carriage scene I'm not excited about at all.
And I'm just that's a two-parter. I'm excited about Pollen episode 4 because there's more journals, and I believe at episode 4 that we have our secret that we've been keeping that we finally get to reveal.
That's right.
And I figured out Colin's whole character arc for the second half from part of the journal.
I love when we cover so much information in any singular episode. I think we are about somewhere between 20 and 25 episodes deep at this point. And we cover so much information in that time period that even though you told me the secret, it was 15 episodes ago. And I completely forgot about it until now. So now I'm excited again.
Yay!
But for now, we must make haste into... No haste.
We can make haste, but I just want to do, kind of do a shout out to our season 3 lead and all of the accolades they've been getting recently.
Yes.
They were both submitted by Netflix for both SAG Awards and Golden Globes, and
Sexiest Thing Live.
Luke, sorry. Luke was just featured in People. Yeah, Johnny Bailey was, but as Fiyero, and as I said, I don't think I said it in our group. I think I said it in our chat. That
I can't believe that it's not as Anthony, because Anthony, unhinged Anthony is Anthony coming out of the pond.
Well, and I kind of think that that might actually be because People did a whole royally sexy section.
Yeah.
And that, if you remember back a few months ago, sometime in the summer, People put out their categories that you could vote on, and Johnny Bailey was in the Sexy Fiyero one, and he ended up winning. But there was no royally sexy to vote on. That part was already figured out, and I think that People did it that way, and I think I think Anthony was included, Johnny Bailey was included in royally sexy, or would have been, but he won Sexy Fiyero.
Yeah.
So he was going to be in it either way. And they probably were going to feature him.
I'm glad that Luke finally got his moment.
Yes. I think they would have featured Johnny If Johnny had not won Sexy Fiero, I think they would have featured Johnny in the Royally Sexy because Wicked is just coming out when the magazine's
Yeah.
coming out. You know what I mean? So I'm really glad he won. Thank you, Bridgerton fans who love Johnny Bailey, so that Luke Newton could have his flowers because he deserved them. He's had a rough summer and he needed it. I don't mean he needed it like
He deserved it.
he's a sad boy. He definitely deserves
He's been overlooked a lot that throughout this whole process. Let me just say that Luke Newton has a style that just does funny little things to my brain. The high-waisted pants seems to be a very Luke Newton special. I mean, I love him in his quirky sweaters as well. I think there's something really comforting and like wholesome and just snuggly. Like you just
it kind of gives you boy next door kind of vibe with the sweaters.
So
kind of like back in the 90s. Do you remember like Abercrombie and Fitch and stuff like that? Like
I'm
they
not American.
always did that. Well, Abercrombie and Fitch in the 90s, and there was a store called Structure, which was bought by the Limited, I think.
All I know about Abercrombie and Fitch is the guys standing out front, the models standing out front topless, the young boys.
But in the fall, they always did a spread that was sweaters.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like I love that Luke Newton has the two sides of him where you've got the boy that you can snuggle up on a couch watching Christmas movies or rom-coms and you're in your comfy sweaters sipping on your hot chocolate, and then you've got like this absolute male version of a bombshell in his high-waisted what is it with high-waisted pants?
Well, and like I said in our chat today, okay, I got it from a TikTok. This girl, the coffee girl or whatever her name is, was talking about Jack Black in The Holiday, because men can understand female gaze when you talk about somebody like Jude Law. So she described the female gaze talking about somebody who's not conventionally attractive, and she went with Jack Black in The Holiday, and she's absolutely right, because in The Holiday you have two leading men, and they are both an archetype for the female gaze. You've got the hot sensitive dad who is comfortable with crying and his emotions. He's very emotionally intelligent, and he's able to separate his adult life from his daughters to protect them. And then you have Jack Black, who is quirky and funny and charming. Like he just oozes charm. He can't help but make her smile. She can't help but smile when she's around him. And he's so interested in what he's interested in, and he's not afraid of drawing attention to himself. And
it's very particular about his interests.
He's very creative. And I said the reason we have been hooked, the reason we are hook, line, and sinker, like
we get crafty Colin, we get family man Colin, we get emotionally sensitive Colin,
my wife Bridgerton,
not afraid to cry Colin, we have not afraid to let his wife shine Colin, we have cheeky Colin, we have mummy's boy Colin. He is such a female gaze character, and I love that Luke Newton has given
drunk. I gotta take care of her. He's I am going to watch Penelope like a hawk.
He's helped sister, in a situation where the other men think that she shouldn't be involved. He's very female gaze ridden. And that's what I was talking about, the sweaters. Sweaters are not something that, like, when a female describes a stereotypical sexy male, not many women are going to be like, oh, I love a man in a sweater. But Colin makes it work. And God damn, well, not Colin.
Luke Newton makes it work.
He makes it work.
And you know what? So he even said in his interview, people mess up and call him Colin all the time, and he doesn't mind, and he answers to it because it is a part of him. And I've not met celebrities, but I've heard stories where celebrities just get super duper rude. Like, how dare you? I am, so-and-so. That's just a character. Like, you're a crazy person. And it's not. It's that, like, we love these characters. And I mean, I very much agree. Like, Colin, to me, the character is not the
Colin is Luke Newton.
I would have
Luke
to say
Newton
he's
is not Colin.
Well, I mean, supposedly he's the most
No. What I mean is, like, like he brought Colin to life, and I cannot imagine anyone else's portrayal of him being exactly what it
Oh,
is that we
for
needed.
no, and I couldn't even like if we sat here and tried to make our own cast, which I think we should do. I think that should be an episode. Like
Ooh.
try and make our own cast. I don't know if I could. And honestly, the more
There are a
I
few I could
really
change out, but not many.
yeah, and I'm not saying make our own cast like we would do it differently. I'm just saying like this person would have also
Yeah, yeah,
done
yeah.
really well with this character.
Like,
Um,
I
but
could if we were to switch the Lukes, in their roles, that would be interesting to see how they would each play that, because obviously from the books they
yeah,
were switched essentially.
the personalities were
Yeah.
switched, yeah. And I almost wonder with Luke Newton getting hired if they kind of made that decision
Mm.
based on who they cast. Like, if we switch up their characters, this person makes more sense for this. But Luke Newton looked very young. I mean, he started at what, 26 or whatever, but he looked even younger
She
than
had the
that. So,
chubby cheeks.
yeah. So they probably were like, he really can't have the personality type that
Yeah.
they ended up giving to Benedict because he's not old enough looking for it. But
Yeah.
the more I watch the whole press tour for Bridgerton
Mhm.
was seriously, I watched this, I can't even speak. I watched this People interview, and then I watched a segment where they had him play this or that, and watching how he processes while he's speaking, and it's
Yeah.
just him, he's not feeding off of
Yes.
anyone else.
Yeah.
He is so expressive, and you can see like he looks off to the right to think, like he's constantly processing what he's going to say and how he's going to say it and everything. And then he kind of looks off to the left, and I think whoever his handler was, or another person in the room was off to the left. There are shippers that are saying it's Nicola, but whatever, it might have been. But he looked off to the left, and he thought about it, but he's making faces like something is amusing to him. He makes a little smirky smile face, and even though he doesn't totally express verbally everything that he's thinking about, you can tell he's got lots of thoughts, and he's that's what made him the perfect Colin. Because, and I'm that's probably like his ADHD or whatever.
You know what? I
But
think because
he
we're
can't
13,
keep what he's thinking off of his face,
we're
and that is why
13, we're 13 minutes in to this episode. We haven't started it, but what I'm thinking is I would actually like to do a episode. I mean, talk about this all the time of all the episodes that we're going to do, and we haven't started them yet. But I would like to do an episode focusing on just talking about the actors in their roles. I think that'd be a really fun episode to do, where we do get to really deep dive into not an episode, not a character analysis, but the actors as the parts they are playing.
Yeah, because I honestly think I could sit down with Luke Newton and I would have a hell of a time. And I'm not talking anything gross.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
like, I think he's just a genuine dude, right?
Mhm.
And
It's very humble.
and you can tell, like, when he's doing the photo taking, and they video it the same time they're taking pictures, he puts on a mask. He definitely is playing a character. He's I have to be sexy me now, right?
Mhm.
But when he's just talking like it, I think he's a real genuine person.
You know the vibe that he gives me? I bet you he kisses his mum on the cheek every time he sees her.
Oh, I'm sure. And his aunties, because I know he's close with his aunties.
Yeah, like,
but
that
just
is the
his
vibe.
faces, his facial expressions, the things that he finds humorous. And don't forget, I mean, I caught every answer he gave on this and that was gotta be loyal to Penelope and Colin's season. I'm gonna say this because of Penelope and Colin, but then they did the secret admirer or big romantic gesture, and he went with secret admirer, and he tried to say because he's not into big romantic gestures. But come on, Colin, we know that you loved her a long time. That was a secret admirer. You both were secret admirers. You just did not communicate.
All right, I'm gonna
talk about the Hawkins ball.
I'm gonna call it here. Now we must make haste into today's episode. 20 years later.
Right. 2 hours later.
Yeah. 2 hours is like, it's meant to be an exaggeration, Patty. 2 hours is the realistic figure, not the exaggeration. Okay. So we are going to start out talking today. We're going to be focusing on Hawkins Innovations Ball. Now, I wanted to dig in a little bit into Lord Hawkins first, because I was kind of wondering whether he was a real lord, because sometimes Bridgerton do borrow from history to create these characters, because, I mean, it is hard to just pull characters out of nowhere. So a lot of times they borrow from history, even if it's not an exact. We don't have a first name to go from, but what I did find was there is a Christopher Hawkins. And this, he was born around the same age as to what Lord Hawkins looked. He's around, yeah, the right age, the right name, and similar, very particular interests. As Christopher Hawkins was very interested in steam power, more specifically towards steam trains. But I mean, a method of movement is a method of movement to me. So the first hot air balloon was invented and flew in 1782, and keep in mind we're in 1815 at this point, so that's only 33 years later. But Hawkins didn't say that he invented the balloon in this. He is saying that he created a new material or structure for the balloon to make it more stable, to be able to fly it further distances. Because I imagine the first one was probably pretty thin, and you're just like one really bad bird swoop away from going bye-byes. So
I'm reading my old notes.
So Sir Christopher was a patron and supporter of the Cornish steam pioneer Richard Roverwick, and in 1812 commissioned from him the world's first steam threshing machine powered by a semi-portable barn engine. So I was like, okay, you've kind of helped create the first steam engine as opposed to helping create a hot air balloon. I'm like, they're pretty similar. So I do think that potentially this is the Lord Hawkins that they have kind of sculpted this Hawkins from. And we talked about this in the last episode, but then I think we decided to cut that and put it into this episode instead, because we talked about it in Pollen's episode, but this was more of a side stories thing. You wanted to talk about the crown and Lord Hawkins' staircase.
Yeah, the banister.
It's really beautiful.
My medications aren't working this week, people.
I have gone to sleep at 4:30 in the morning till 5 in the morning, 2 days in a row, because little man wet the bed at. I was scrubbing my table until 2:30 in the morning, and then realized that my hands wasn't all right.
And it's got it almost looks like a clattering, really.
Design. So Lord Hawkins' staircase is really, really this intricate, beautiful. It has a crown on top, and they really, really focus on it. So I kind of thought that there would be some sort of symbolism to it, sort of like the other ones, because they really, like, the camera really pans over it before getting up to show Francesca being escorted in by Benedict, and then Colin and Eloise coming in after them. So it's got it's got this it's got this round bit in the middle, and it almost looks like if you turned vines into a princess carriage. So it kind of gave me Cinderella vibes in the way that it almost looks like the Cinderella carriage, and then on top of it is a crown. It's not a carriage, but like it if you use your imagination here, folks, go for it, Patty.
So we only have Lord Hawkins because of the Hawkins Ball, and the Hawkins Ball is where Penelope and Debling, probably we can officially say, start their public courtship, right?
Yeah.
And it's important.
It's kind of where he chooses. This is the moment where he chooses Penelope over Cressida.
Right. My thought process, though, is we're talking about the staircase, and it's gold, like gold. So what are we seeing? We are seeing a lord. Think about how Wilding and Stanton described Debling. He's singular in his pursuit.
Yeah.
But he's so rich, he can be. So we're at the Hawkins Ball. We just watched him have this whole day with this balloon and lecturing, and you see how people treat him in that tent, like people wanting to say, like, you know, going by ship is still better. They're trying to, it shows how a lot of the people in the ton think of him, because he is so particular and he is so weird. So we can know that that's how people really think of Debling. He's weird.
And even though he has done something fantastic and astronomically amazing, it is still put down because, oh, well, we can use this, so why would we use that?
Right.
The
So we
compare
come in and we now
and bring
see,
down.
we come up on the estate. We see how vast the estate is. We see how the entrance to it is. The entrance is long. And
Mhm.
then you come in and he's got a gold staircase. So we are seeing, without seeing Debling's actual estate, we are seeing what Penelope probably would have
Hmm.
if she were to choose Debling. And now, mind
Well,
you, we need to look at this from the viewpoint of Colin Bridgerton, because what is their future home? Her and Colin,
yeah, so
a townhouse.
yeah,
This is this is what
Hawkins.
she would have had. That is why Colin was so insecure, and that is why he stepped back when she walked on that dance floor with Debling, and he couldn't bring himself to do it. I think the besides Debling taking over the situation, I think in the end he gave her up because he believed he couldn't compete, and we're
Hmm.
seeing that here. This plays in. It allows us to see into what it would be like in Debling's home, what she would have. And you can see how people treat him. Like when Portia walks in and he's like, "Do you want to see the new thing called a lamp?" And she's like, "No."
I love that scene.
I love it. Polly Walker, that's my favorite thing you've ever done. I love it
I know.
all day. It's so funny. It's even better than why must I always struggle or whatever,
Yeah.
like in the
Why must I always be
inserts
punished? Yeah.
himself-wear scene. Yeah, like the no, that's just the best. But
It
in
was
that
so
vein,
polite
okay,
and so rude all in one
yes.
word.
And look at how Polly Walker is with Lord Hawkins. She wants Debling so bad because for Penn, because she wants to have access to that money. She wants to have access to that estate. She wants to have
Yeah.
access to that security. And she believes she would be able to treat him the way she treats Hawkins, the way she treats her girls, and she would rule the roost. She did not want Colin, not because he's a Bridgerton. She wanted to align with the Bridgertons, but Colin is unpredictable.
Yeah.
Colin does not look at Portia like, he doesn't cower. He's not Finch. He's not Dankworth.
Yeah. He's a man.
She knows he would be rather difficult
To manage.
Like he is a man who is full on in his masculinity, and she doesn't want that. She wants a man who's a little more submissive.
Yeah.
I mean, Colin's gonna be a submissive husband because Penn's boss babe, but she doesn't see it that way. The thing is Colin's masculine enough to allow his wife to be a boss babe, but he ain't gonna let his mother-in-law be nothing.
I think this season we finally get to see Portia healing, because last season she was still in this fight or flight kind of mode because her husband had died, but she didn't even get to finally feel relieved because she was so scared of everything being taken away from her by Jack. But this season, yes, we do have the Dundas situation going on, but in the second half, when her daughter is finally pregnant, she kind of has a bit of relief there to some degree and starts to, I feel like this is when we start to see her healing from the past traumas of being mistreated by her husband, and seeing her daughters all finally be married off and finding their own in marriages where their husbands view them as equals who respect and take care of and protect them. I think there was a lot of healing in seeing her daughters be treated in a way that she never got to experience.
Yeah, I told him he had 10 extra. He's like 10 extra. Portia's entrance.
But that
So
was
what are we
Portia's
talking
entrance.
about
So
next, Lady
Lady Tosh says that we are going to discuss the Bridgertons. Surprise, surprise. So we have Benedict, who is escorting in Francesca, whilst Colin is sort of escorting-ish in Eloise. And Colin and Eloise kind of stop to talk in front of the carriage. And what I realized here is Violet completely lingers back. And I wonder whether, I mean, like, obviously they also have her linger back so that we can get the Lord Anderson introduction in a minute. But I also sort of wonder whether it was an intentional choice of Violet because she has noticed that there is some sort of disagreement going on between her siblings, her children, and she sort of wants the siblings to kind of work it out amongst themselves and not really get involved, because where Eloise is concerned, she gets very nervous about getting involved with her daughter, not knowing how she'll respond.
Yeah, and I think she's finally at that point because of the introduction of Samadani that she sees the end in sight
Yeah.
for her herding Francesca through the marriage mart this year. And I
Yeah.
use the word herding because Eloise said she was trussed up like a prize
Yeah.
cow. So I think it's kind of that moment as a parent where you kind of step back and you're looking at your kids and you're realizing how grown they are and they just don't need you in the same way. And this is before, like, I think Violet was spending a lot of time at the beginning of this season fearing that,
Mm.
like fearing her children, because honestly, Antony has been the father figure to Hyacinth and Gregory for so long that she doesn't have that same protectiveness and everything for them as
Yeah.
much. Like, she's not concerned about their time on the marriage mart in the future because she knows that's going to be
Well,
fully Kate and Antony.
Hyacinth
This
and
is,
Hyacinth and Gregory lost a potential father, but they had Antony in the place. They didn't know any differently,
right,
whereas the older children lost Edmund as their father. And that's a
right.
very distinctive difference. Yes, it is incredibly sad to grow up not having known a parent, but I think there's a different kind of pain where you had them and you've lost them, especially when he was a father that was so close with his children.
Right. And I think this would have been a moment. And she does look pensive herself. And
Yes.
she's just kind of watching her children walk away. And it's almost like she's walking with the ghost of Edmund. And
Yeah.
she's kind of like, we did good. Look at our kids. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of all of them. You would be proud of all of them. Like, I think all of that is going through her head. And that's why it's such a big deal. Like, she's so lost in her own thoughts that's why she drops her glove. And then
Yeah.
that is, I almost kind of get this whole Edmund a lot, like they
Yeah.
had that
Yeah. Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
of look at what we did, and then like he is, now's the time, you know what I
It's
mean,
it's
this is the
it's
perfect
time to
time.
let go. It's time to let go of your
Enter
glove.
round two. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to let go and to move on. This is where Cheap Thrills starts playing, and I want to talk about that
No,
specifically
it's already been
because,
playing, but okay.
well, we get,
It played
you
when
know what
they
I mean.
rolled up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we know the chorus. This is the chorus part. Yeah.
Yes, this is the chorus part. Now, the problem that I have with Cheap Thrills is in Queen Charlotte, Violet had kind of discussed that she wasn't necessarily ready to move on or be loved. She was discussing very specifically that she was ready to have her garden tended, that she had certain desires that were coming back into her life, that she was finding herself wanting, not necessarily wanting a husband or a companion, but the girl was horny. Let's just put it there.
I know how she feels because, and I think that that's their way of saying Violet is heading into
A new
the
season of her
change of
own.
life.
Yeah.
Because no, the change of life, because your hormones go pretty nuts, and it's definitely a I'm single. There's times that I miss that kind of companionship. Do I want everything else that goes with it? Not necessarily.
I mean, our main viewership typically, if our Spotify audience is anything to go by, is in the 35 to 60-year-old range. So I'm sure there are plenty of people that can understand what Violet is going through right now.
Yeah. Violet's like, do I consider being can I have a fling with the footman discreetly? And I know
Mm.
which footman she would choose. She'd choose the one that likes Eloise, that
I was gonna
he's,
say Eloise's footman. He's
Eloise is, yeah,
he's a little cupcake. He is.
it'd be a little cougar town, but yeah.
I actually really liked Cricket. So let my brain catch up. Yeah, so a tall, dark, and handsome fellow kind of reaches down and goes to go pick up. The way that they both bend at the same time is like a choreographed dance. And yes, I know that this is choreographed, but it was like the way that they did it. Like, you know how when you walk up to someone and you're going to pass them, but you both step to the side at the same time and you step to the same side, so then you both step to the other side. It's not an intentional choreographed dance,
Right.
but it is one. And the way that they kind of just moved in sync together kind of gave me that sort of vibe as well. And do you notice here that unlike her children, Violet actually follows social protocol? Neither of them introduces themselves because that
No.
is not done. It is not until halfway through this episode that Lady D, Granny D, comes and introduces Marcus. So at this point,
and
we have
this is how it should be done.
yes.
So like when
You can have an interaction with someone,
comes in,
but not be introduced.
yeah. So Debling approaching Penn at
Mhm.
the ice cream table at the refreshment table should have never happened. The reason the reason they always
Well,
say briefly,
even Lord
the reason
Carmarthen.
but well, and Francesca handled it correctly
Yes.
because technically they did meet briefly
Mhm.
and they did not introduce themselves. They
Yes.
did speak. So she handled it properly as well. And she realized the moment she wanted to say something else, she had to leave.
Yes. Yeah.
But think about like Benedict screwed up in episode 4 after he's met Tilly, but nobody introduced them and they already were intimate. He almost gives it away because
Yes.
she gets called over and they're like, have you met Lady Arnold? And he's like,
briefly.
yes. And she goes, briefly.
Not that brief.
To remind him, like, you almost screwed the pooch, dude.
And he goes,
like,
can we use another synonym? It wasn't that brief. Thank you very much.
It was not that brief, but they say briefly. That's to let you know they were not properly introduced. Yeah. It was an accidental meeting. What happened with Violet and Lord Anderson was accidental on purpose. And they did it like if anybody's watched Pride and Prejudice, this is actually in my old notes. Women would like throw down handkerchiefs or throw down a glove like on purpose. Like we see
Cressida in the first season.
Cressida in the first season. We also in Pride and Prejudice
not
Kitty.
Not Hadwell. One of the girls does it.
Yeah.
To Colin.
And Colin picks it up. Yeah.
The very first.
The Asian.
Yes.
Asian debutante that he comes across.
Yeah. Miss Goring. Goring.
No, that wasn't Goring.
No, not Goring. What's her name? I have it.
I thought Miss Hallowell was. You have another.
She is. She's also Asian, but it's a different.
Yeah. But she does it on purpose, and I don't know why I'm not thinking of the sister from Pride and Prejudice. Who
is it? Is it not the girl? No, it's not the one from. I think she's the last season debutante, the one who does it.
She might be kind of showing the other Debs the ropes, like watch what I can do.
Yeah,
men have to pick it up. They have to pick it up. It's a gentlemanly thing to do. But in Pride and Prejudice, the 1995 version, when Kitty and Lydia, finally got it. When Kitty and Lydia are doing it, Lydia throws it into marching soldiers. They're not going to break formation. And that's how you learn her character, because she actually is affronted that they did not stop and pick it up. And she couldn't meet a soldier because she doesn't understand the protocols of the military. But that is a thing. Like, and Violet didn't do it on purpose, but Lord Anderson did exactly what he was supposed to do. They exchanged pleasantries as they should. If somebody does a kindness for you, you want to acknowledge their kindness, but they did not introduce themselves. That's how you know if you go.
They did not deepen the conversation either.
Yeah, you go back to any other introduction, the first time two people are talking together, you now know who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong. Because Lord Debling talked to Penelope in a room where he could have asked someone to introduce him and he chose not to. So he broke protocol. Well, she should not have acknowledged his name because he's a higher rank than her family. So she broke protocol, but he kind of made her do it. Like his rank and him interacting with her forced her to have to break etiquette. And it's kind of in my opinion, it was a control tactic, but the way he talked to Cressida, it is very familiar. Like he knows Cressida, but the way that Lady Cowper talks about Lord Debling, at Stowell House, I really don't think I think he knew of her enough to know her name, but he didn't know her. And he was very familiar with the both of them, actually. He was not following etiquette at all.
Yeah.
But we learn that because we have this perfect example of how you handle things. And when Danbury does come in like later and says, you've met my brother, and she does the introduction, like that's what makes it so, it makes it kind of, so deliciously awkward because you can see their attraction for each other right off. And, they're both kind of becoming aware of each other. And then the second she finds out that it's a family member of Danbury, and she was so high and mighty at the end of Queen Charlotte as she was figuring out what happened with, and this again, like you can't judge somebody until you actually go through a similar situation. And now that she's going to be in this similar situation, like that's why we have that beautiful friendship moment towards the end of the second half, because she finally went through it herself as an older woman, and where she was judging Lady Danbury from the heart and mind of herself at 14 or 15 or however old she was at the time, she's now looking at it from a mature woman's point of view.
Yeah, and I think there's also the part that I think when you grow up, you see your parents as just your parents and not as people. Whereas when you hit those certain ages and you recall your parents at those ages as well, I think you start to see them in an entirely different perspective of you were now going through the same things in life that they were going through, and you can see, you can empathize a lot more with them. And I think Violet, having had the love that at that age, Violet didn't know that every marriage wasn't a loving one, because that's like she'd only ever seen what she saw in her parents, and so she didn't understand about why people would cheat or why people would be with other people. But then she experienced a loving relationship with Edmund and realized that what her parents had wasn't all there was.
Well, and I think she understood as a child that her parents did not have a loving marriage, but it made her love her father and admire her father all the more, because you could tell she was not a fan of her mother.
Yeah. Which is
but
sad.
I think that as she's grown up and as she's lived her life, had her love, had her children, and walked a mile. Walked a mile. Now she's walking a mile in Lady Danbury's shoes at this point, because mind you, at 15 years old, and Lady Danbury was early 20s, they weren't that far off. That's why they are able to be friends now.
I would say they're about
kind of interesting that
10 to 15 years off. I'd say 15 maybe.
Well, her oldest son is only like 5 or 6, and she was married off before, like she was only like 16.
10 years, I'd say.
Yeah, maybe 10 years. So it's the perfect age gap where she can be a motherly figure but also be a friend.
Yeah.
At their age.
Yeah.
So now that we went through that whole thing, I don't even remember what my point would be.
Sorry.
But anyways, like now she's understanding that when Lady Danbury was going through this back in the day, and she met and talked with Violet that one, that at least that one time, that she understood.
This thing. What is? I think my dog has started. One moment, I'll be back. So yeah, I think the point that I started to make at the start of this was we obviously immediately get some kind of inkling towards the fact that this is going to be Violet's new love interest, but love interest in what regard, we're not sure. So to play us a song like Cheap Thrills kind of really gives a stupid kind of impression that it's going to be a fling or a sexual thing or a Lady Tilly Benedict kind of a situation, and not anything more. So the song choice that they chose for that part just didn't really fit for me.
Well, and I know that in the Bridgerton, the actual Bridgerton podcast, when they talked with the music people, I think it was that or an interview, they said the reason they chose it is because of the whole Hawkins inventions, the balloon scene, because in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, all of the drama and stuff happened because they're having a boring season, and they're not allowed to work. So they literally just spend their time. Those with singular pursuits are not bored, obviously, because as my 10th grade English teacher used to always say, shout out Mrs. Barta, only boring people get bored.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Penelope has Lady Whistledown. Colin has his travels. We've got Lord Dibbling, who's got his very particular interests. We've got Violet, who's got her children to focus upon. Same with Lady Danbury. She's got her relationship with the Queen. She's got, meddling to do. Cressida and Eloise, and that's actually a big point that I want to make in this episode, is bored. Actively
Eloise
bored.
Has nothing. There is nothing that she occupies her time with. And that's what most of the people in the ton are like. And that is why they chose Cheap Thrills, because going to ogle the eccentric lord with his new funny, and like think about how Wilding and Stanton talk about it when they say, oh, we should have known you'd be here, Bridgerton. Yeah. You're into the fanciful. Like, we today don't view a hot air balloon as fanciful. We understand the technology of it and the
Yeah.
science behind it, but back then they didn't. Like, it was new to them, and people are scared of new most of the time.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people are still scared of hot air balloons because they are dangerous.
Well, I'm not a super fan of height, so I would love
I
to
can
go up in a hot
appreciate
air
I
balloon,
can
but I
appreciate
also would
watching
not.
them. I appreciate watching them. Like
Yeah.
if I could go and have a breakfast picnic in Turkey and watch, all those hot air balloons go up for the sunrise hot air balloon, I'm happy to watch that, not
Yeah.
be in the hot air balloon. Thank you.
No, I can't do the looking down if I don't feel like I'm somewhere safe.
Yeah,
I can't walk on like they do those floors or those walkways that are glass so that you can see down.
I've been on so
Like some
many
cruise ships
and
will do it,
hate it.
or observatories. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no, not happening.
I've done it over, yeah, the a couple of the tallest sky towers in the world. And I feel like it wasn't the Grand Canyon, but it was something else that was like it could have been Grand Canyon actually. I can't recall, but I know I didn't feel good about
Yeah,
it.
The Grand Canyon has a walkout thing that's glass.
Yeah.
I've not been to the Grand Canyon yet in my lifetime.
For
So
those, I actually really preferred Bryce National Park and Zion National Park to the Grand Canyon personally. But that could have also been for the fact that it was, sorry, heavily
bless
snowing.
you, whatever that was.
Don't know. It was heavily snowing while I was in them, so it was like quite mad. But let's go back to okay, we're up to the
Well,
feathering.
do we want to talk plot hole now that we've met Lord Anderson?
No,
No, not
that's in
till
a
Danbury
very
introduces him.
specific. Yeah, it's the introduction part that I wanted to talk about it.
Okay, foreshadowing. Dun dun
Oh,
dun.
da, da, da. Let's talk about the Featherington lady. So
No,
you don't get a choice. This is my notes. I can draw the
I was
show.
doing that was my Portia
No,
impression.
no,
No.
no. Yep, yep, yep.
I love that so much. No.
You need to watch Yes Man. Yes,
Paul
Portia's
Rudd,
such a
yes,
bitch.
man.
Yeah. So
I love yes, man.
so the Featherington ladies all arrive at the Hawkins ball, and yet again, they are all wearing different cuts, colors, styles, and it just gives me the sense of like disjointment between the family. There's no cohesiveness at all. Whereas later
Right.
on, like at the Dankworth Finch ball, I feel like there is a cohesion amongst them.
Even at the wedding breakfast.
Yes.
The
Yep.
wedding breakfast, they're more cohesive.
Yeah, and I do feel like outfits are definitely tied into kind of where either individual characters are at or where the family status as a whole is at. But ironically, Portia is wearing like a really deep fuchsia color in this episode, which I don't know how it's not fuchsia, but I didn't know how to describe it. It's a very deep color, which to me is rather melancholy on her, which is ironic considering her previous comment. And then we go over to Araminta and Cressida who are entering. And to focus on Cressida's outfit for today, she is wearing one of the oddest outfits of the season where Cressida's usually wearing pinks and pink is meant to be a very romantic color. In this episode she's wearing gold, which is interesting considering she's meant to be kind of hunting Lord Dibling, as you will, and yet she's not wearing a romantic color. You would think that if it was her time for romance that they would have her in the pink, but they have her in gold. And it is happy for it. So it's a really, really harsh outfit though. This is probably her outfit with one of the biggest shoulders, the stiffest edges, and has a kind of futuristic it has a really futuristic appearance, like the kind of necklace. It's not a necklace, but it's kind of a piece that's built, it goes with the outfit specifically, but it actually kind of reminded me, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Fifth Element, the drag queen Ruby Rod. It just seemed like an outfit that she would wear. And I was like, okay, Cressida, I can see you as a drag queen. You'd make an excellent drag queen.
Okay, so remember how I said at Loon Festival thing?
Yeah.
Right? She was wearing half pink, half yellow.
Yes.
And we know yellow is a Penelope color.
Yes.
Here she is in a complete version of yellow. It's gold, but it's still, and So my theory is if you think about the balloon scene, she is equal parts confident, like who says I wasn't hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equal parts confident, but equal parts awkward because we view Penelope as the awkward social outcast. And
Yeah.
Cressida doesn't know what she's doing with Debling. Like the more you want something, the more insecure you're gonna be about whether you can get it or not. And I think
Yeah.
when Cressida wasn't being forced, like wasn't being pressured so much, she was, I mean, she's always been mean, but she was a little more way more confident. Think season 1,
Yeah.
how she interacted with Daphne, and then come into season 2 and how she's not as assertive. And now season 3, she's hanging out with one of the most socially awkward people ever.
Mm-hmm.
She's competing with the other most socially awkward person ever. And in the course of this episode, she goes from pink into gold. And at the balloon scene, she's in half and half. And if you look at, I'm actually on cap that trying to pull up close up of her. She's or the bodice of her dress. Yes, she's got those huge bell arms. But if you look at the bodice, like
I love
over
that Jessica
her
Madsen.
chest,
Sorry, yeah, the bottom. Yeah,
it's a butterfly. And who wore yellow with a butterfly bodice in her most awkward time when she was forced on the marriage mart? She was pressured by her mother. She had no say. And here she is standing on the sidelines. And if you look at Cressida's dress,
because Cressida doesn't know who she is.
See?
She is, yeah. Cressida doesn't, it is very much butterfly. Cressida doesn't know who she is. She is kind of like a chameleon of like trying to put on all these different colors, all these different skins in order to
and this dress is
someone.
This dress is actually one of my favorites for symbolism because if you look at her collar, the collar is very much like she is like a dog to her parents.
Yeah.
And it's a lace-up collar.
Leashed.
Like
yeah.
She is leashed. She is leashed by her parents.
Yes.
But she is so awkward and she is so insecure in this moment at this time that this is Penelope manifested in her. We learn the most about Cressida's personality and character here too, because she could be going, oh my gosh, like look at Eloise. Eloise spends all her time on the wall and not fitting in. And she ends up becoming more empathetic to Penelope and why she made choices she made and stuff like that. But Cressida is living it. She is deep down and she never, ever, ever can look at Penelope. Penelope is always, for some reason, to Cressida, Penelope is that person that she just despises. She can't look at her like a human being at all. I just don't. She's living her life right now, and we see it in the symbolism of this dress. This dress is like Penelope's dress from season 1, not as garishly yellow. It's more gold because this is still Cressida.
It is still garish though, in a way that
those bell sleeves are so garish.
Well, what I find interesting is that Araminta thinks that they are kind of, I think they're trying to be like the cutting edge of technology or fashion, as you will. She is trying to stand out of the crowd. She is trying to make herself, be the elite of them. But in doing so, standing out isn't always a good thing. And they come off as being ridiculous in the same way that the Featheringtons do, for being very garish. And the costume department did say that they do that purposefully, that some families have very distinctive style to try and show their status in society, that maybe those who try to stand out and try to be individuals do get cast out because of it.
And, character juxtaposition, I love that.
Yes.
Penelope was invisible in her family. She was invisible in her home. Her mother decided her color was going to be yellow out in the ton. Like she's going to wear bright yellow because she wants her to take up space. She doesn't want her to fade into the wall. She doesn't want her to be invisible until, the whole Colin situation. Then she's like, please go be invisible. And in this case, I see this the same way. Cressida, as Penelope gains more attention, and the focus is on other people. It's on Francesca. It's on Colin, and what lady might catch Colin's eye. Cressida is trying so hard to not be invisible.
Yeah.
That she and her mother are choosing forward fashion or garish fashion instead of choosing garish colors. She's choosing garish fashion, the big rosettes on the shoulders, the big bell sleeves, just the
I
way,
love
and
that
the hairstyles.
Jessica Madsen has said that she basically this season had to walk into doorways sideways because of how
Mm-hmm.
big her shoulders were getting, and that going to toilets
Right.
was just an absolute nightmare for her, more so than any other cast member.
And we know like Cressida's biggest fear, I would say, I don't think she cares if she gets married or not. Her biggest fear is being invisible. It's being overlooked for someone else.
Mhm.
She's been an only child. She has gotten 100% of her mother's attention her
Mhm.
whole life. And then she keeps getting, every season, she keeps getting overlooked for someone else. And that person, ends up being a Bridgerton. Not so much that she got overlooked by an actual Bridgerton in season
Mhm.
2, but she almost was able to marry Jack. It would have been crap, but she almost was able to marry Jack. And Penelope, in the end, well, Colin thwarted that, honestly, with the
Yeah.
whole like, she doesn't really
Mhm.
know. That part doesn't come
Yeah.
out, but a Bridgerton thwarts her plans. Like, but her biggest fear, I think, is becoming invisible and not being important in society. Because remember, who does
Yeah.
she say she wants to be? She wants to lord it up like Lady Danbury.
Yes, yeah. And I think the interesting thing here is we get to see a lot of where Araminta's not loyalties lie, but like where her priorities lie, where her daughter is concerned. And I think this is the time where we start to see Cressida being humanized, not just from Eloise's perspective, but as audience members getting to see an insight into Cressida's upbringing, where Araminta is telling her daughter, basically, it doesn't matter what you want. You need to go and secure Lord Debling. Do whatever you have to do to secure the win, because if you do not, your father is going to cut off our finances. We're going to have to wear these same outfits yet again. And she's more
Well, and
concerned
here's the
about the
thing, and
social
this is what
stand.
kind of like they don't really say that Lord Cowper is not Cressida's father. We know there's an age difference, but the fact that if she doesn't marry, if she doesn't, if this stuff doesn't work, he's not just cutting off Cressida's allowance that buys her clothing and whatever. He's cutting off Airment. So they are a unit and he's kind of separate. I had that vibe the whole time based on like the way they talked about it. It's like her status with him is completely based on her child because she
Mm,
didn't produce a boy, she didn't produce an heir. So he needs Cressida to get married and have a child so there's an heir to his family name
yeah,
because I bet he doesn't want Joanna to get it.
no.
If Joanna has a child, we don't know what Joanna's family's like. We just know Joanna exists. So he's very much in the same situation as Portia, where he's some stranger from who lives in the country could end up getting everything he's worked and built because his wife could not produce a male and his wife could not raise their daughter to attract a male to
I
produce an
think
heir.
Aunt Joanna very, very much gives single old spinster vibes because
Yeah,
it's the same
Spencer
kind of
aunt
it's the same spinster aunt archetype that they've used in every other
or
Regency
widow. I
TV.
mean, Pride and Prejudice, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, she's a widow.
She's got the vibes of like never been touched kind of female rage. That's the
But
vibe that she's.
but when she says like let me see what I've got to work with, I think he is sending Cressida to Aunt Joanna's, one to get her out of the ton, but two to find her a country lord, to find her
Yeah,
a match out in the country. He doesn't trust his wife to be able to do it anymore, so he's now bringing in Rian.
yeah,
And
but
she wouldn't necessarily have that kind of pull in her community unless she had been a
yeah.
married woman herself.
I mean,
I think she's widowed.
hell,
And I think her.
look at Aunt Josephine. She wasn't widowed. Well, I mean, she was widowed, but not in the Tom's eyes because she was married to a. Sorry, Aunt Josephine is from Anne of Green Gables, or Anne with an E. And she was a lesbian. So, but she's still
And that was,
very,
well,
very
and
much.
Anne with an E, she was a lesbian. They don't give that impression in the books or the
Okay.
other version. But
Apparently,
she
it's quite interesting that they're now realizing in a lot of books how it was very subtly written and it could never be explicitly aware back and then because obviously it
right.
was illegal. But Not that I'm
but
saying
Anne
that
of
Aunt
Green
Joanna.
Gables was turn of the century
Yes.
1900, so
Yeah.
it's a whole 100 years later too.
Yes. But what was I say? Oh, yeah. So I don't think that Aunt Joanna has any children that could inherit, because I very much am getting the impression that she is a spinster, kind of a,
And she wouldn't help Cressida find someone if she had a male child.
actually,
She
you
doesn't
could
want.
you could be correct that she's a widow, because she's acting like as if like, oh, no wonder Cressida is unmarried. Like she is so unkempt, like not unkempt, like, she's not following
The house
societal
is too
rules.
warm.
The house is
Yeah.
too warm. Yeah, so I think she possibly was married, but obviously it was not a love match, practical match, and she probably hated her husband and didn't, all the rest of it. So I don't think that she has children, though. She just does not give the vibes of someone's had children. Although there are plenty, like, no matter Portia and Araminta's faults, I think the reason that Lord Cowper uses Cressida to control Araminta is because Araminta does have some level of love and care for her daughter, but she cares for herself more.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think she loves her daughter. I think it's just in the scene we really get to see that her care for her appearances and her standing in society and those kinds of things are more important to her than Cressida's happiness. Because like she's like, well, I love you, and like my version of loving you is securing you the highest financial status, kind of a little bit like
Yeah.
Portia, more so than who's going to love you, who's going
It's
to take
the
care of you,
I
who's going
put
to
a roof
balance
over
you.
your head kind of
Yeah.
parental love. It's the
Yes.
I bought the dress you're currently wearing.
Yeah.
And if you want another dress, you're going to go talk to Lord Debling and
Yes.
secure a dance with him.
And
Yeah.
Araminta, because she has so little happiness in her life, her happiness does come from very superficial things like clothing, like social events, like marrying her daughter off, getting to say, oh, well, my daughter had the most advantageous marriage. Those are the things that bring her happiness, not my daughter married for happiness. My daughter found a love match. My daughter's had a child, and now I'm a grandmother. Those kind of warm and fuzzy feelings are not what we're going to get from Araminta. So I think she does love Cressida, just not in a caring kind of manner.
No. Well, I think she's also you can see what success for a wife and mother is, and it's how well their children marry, but what your value system is as to what or who they marry. So like Violet wants her children to marry for love.
Yeah.
She doesn't care that Samadani is a Marquess.
Yeah.
She wants Francesca to love the person that she married.
Yeah, very, very much that. And speaking of marriage, let's talk about Eloise. So Colin and Eloise have descended down the staircase together, and I spied the funniest.
Oh no, she was like, no, I'm out. Like them girls come up.
Eloise spies a group of debutantes approaching Colin. She makes the funniest face. It's like well,
you made me wait until now to talk about it. Benedict ducks like he's gonna hide behind Francesca.
Goose.
He just ducks his head like, what are these girls flying up there, Benedict? He totally ducks his head like, don't see me, don't see me, don't see me. And they don't even have eyes for him, and he was one of the people there.
Eloise in this moment, because she's like, this is your shit show. I'm not having a tire of that.
It really is. She's like, you brought this on yourself, brother. I am out.
How dare you be chivalrous and save someone's life? Like, you brought this attention upon yourself. You deal with it. I'm not dealing with it. But I think this episode, we really, really get to see Eloise finally struggling. Like, up until now, she's kind of been able to keep herself busy enough. And I think I do have a lot more notes on this later on, but I just want to...
I think she did her round.
Yeah.
She courted all of the debutantes to see if she could find a friend that was like Penelope, and she could not. She is not making connection. Well, she just doesn't have the connection.
Yeah, so she bows out. She leaves Colin. She defend for himself, and she goes and looks around. She sees Cressida first. She's like, oh, and then she sees that he's talking to Lord Debling, and she looks quite despondent about it. She then goes and said to go talk to some debutantes. So she like starts to approach them, hears that they are discussing what weddings that they would like for their future, and she's like, I'm out. She like absolutely dips out. She's like, I can't do this. And she's finally coming to realize that she may be the only woman in the ton who is not obsessed with finding a husband. She thinks that she is content on her own, but I kind of wanted talk about that a little bit. Do you think that Eloise is truly content? Because I can't tell, like obviously we're gonna have, well, I mean, when I say obviously, I think we are going to have still Sir Philip, but the way that the season has gone, it honestly would not surprise me if they did a complete double take on us and did a Eloise Cressida kind of mix or something along those lines, especially with Eloise spending the next season around Michaela, then it might do a Benedict and open her eyes to the possibilities of the world. We don't know, so I'm not going to make any assumptions, but let's pretend for a second that she is completely hetero and they're going to go with the Sir Philip kind of storyline. Doesn't really fit in with the portrayal that they are giving Eloise at the moment, where she has zero interest in falling in love. She has zero interest in finding a husband. She has zero interest in being a mother, and she cannot tolerate women whom that is their interest, really.
Well, and I think that it's not that she has zero interest.
She wants it, she doesn't want it to be her only interest, shall I say.
Yeah, she is so adamant about what women are not allowed to have, and like she wants everything that she's not allowed to have, not allowed to achieve. And I think that she's just repelled by it. She's like, this is it. And it truthfully, it's being a late bloomer partially. I think she is very much just a late bloomer. And she'll come into it, but she's met someone who sparked her interest, and she knows, and this was somebody who loved her for her mind.
Yeah, he sparked her mind more so than her sexual desire, because when he did try to make it a sexual thing, she was like, hang on a minute. And it wasn't in a dismissive way of not being sexually interested in him. I think it was just the moment where she realized, this isn't the way that I'm raised. This isn't the way that we do things. I can't actually do this because this can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I think that she, in that moment, she realized briefly, where she screwed up, and then but she couldn't admit, because of everything that came out in Whistledown, and then finding out Penelope was Whistledown. She had someone to blame rather than take accountability for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we get all the quips of, oh, well, if she can't find anything to talk about, she'll just make something up. Like, she is not ready to admit her role in that whole situation. And it's not until she goes through this whole thing alone, this whole season. Yes, she's got Cressida, and Cressida really calls her out about
when
her
she
own
doesn't
self.
but when she doesn't have Cressida, what does she have? She is, as soon as she doesn't have Cressida or Penelope to fall back upon, she is bored. And this is the first time that we kind of see her not necessarily missing Penelope, but realizing that maybe she'd been using Penelope and Cressida as a crutch in society, and that without them, society sucks.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think she's bored. I think she's
bored of the company
it's
she's
like
in.
it's hell for her. It's
Yeah.
awkward.
Yeah.
There's nobody there to talk to. She's very much she's the ADHD. She's a verbal processor. She needs stimulation. She needs the dopamine rush, and that is not talking cross.
Well, she is the opposite of that. She's the juxtaposition to Francesca, whom just wants peace and quiet. I don't think Eloise knows what to do with herself with peace and quiet, to be honest.
No.
And I think
she's not a very people-y person. She's not a super social person. She's the kind that
she is, but she likes it one person at a time, like a one-to-one, not a group event.
Yeah, she's very, and I think when you get to know Eloise, when you she allows you to get to know her, and when you mind meld, when you have a similar interest and you mind meld with somebody like that, that creates a deep connection when you have that kind of ability, because her and Penn, it's not like they have, yes, their whole thing is books, but they both read anything.
Mm-hmm.
They read books of fact. Penelope talking about that, Eloise saying, I don't think anyone in here has read a book from the start to finish. Penelope's in the room, dude. That was harsh. Yeah. Because the two of them talking about books, they both share each other's books. So what Penelope is reading, Eloise is reading, and it's not, they have so many interests, and they are just such intelligent women. And I think that Penelope, because she loves society, and she's that girl that I don't know if she necessarily wanted to be popular, but she wanted to be noticed. And Eloise wants nothing to do with it. So if you think of a metaphor for their characters, think of Mean Girls, think of
Mm,
Katie. Katie has had zero social interaction. She's been in Africa with her parents,
yeah.
and she wants to be noticed. She wants to make friends. She makes friends with the one girl and the and I don't know their name, but that
Gretchen.
girl just yeah,
Oh,
she used to be friends with
yeah. Gretchen, with I know all the names. My brain's just
but
I haven't slept.
they look down their noses at literally anything the popular people do.
Yeah,
And mainly because she was friends with her in elementary school, and that went south. But that's Eloise. So Eloise and Penn are like,
Janice.
yeah, or like Katie and Janice.
Yeah,
They have a connection, they have similar interests, stuff like that, but one wants to be a part of everything and one wants absolutely nothing to do with it.
yeah.
She's happy at just being her and Penn. Like, she doesn't need anything else. She doesn't understand the physical and I think that is why Philip, if they make Philip like how Philip is in the book,
Well, what I don't understand
he
is
awakens her in a way that, like, okay, you're never gonna get there, so I'm just gonna shut this door and we're gonna hash this out.
the line where he's like, you're worried that we're not going to work. And then he shuts the door and he's like, let me show you that we will. And I was like,
Yeah, it's like,
bam.
let's have an experiment.
Let me play with now my brain can only think about that scene.
Glitch.
Well,
My son is ready though, since we're at
okay.
this, like,
Yeah, well, we're
just
gonna
gonna
get
run.
through this. We're gonna get through this one part, and then we'll close
Okay.
up the day.
Yeah,
So
I told him we're finishing a point and then I'll come get him.
yeah. So I think this is probably a good finishing off point before next week. Anyway, so the last point that I wanted to make was still on this line. What I don't understand is why they changed book Eloise to series Eloise so much, because book Eloise was a writer, and I would have loved with the character development that Eloise has taken in the series, and I'm not mad at it. I love Eloise's character in the series. I think she is a very three-dimensional character where she is interesting, she is funny, she was pushing against the times and what women can and can't do. And I think a big part of that would have been writing. And that when she goes to live with Sir Philip, I think it should have been part of her character development for him to recognize her writing and being like, wow, that's
Yeah.
really good. I think that you should be a writer. I don't want them to just send her off to the country with all this character development that she's going through right now. All of
He's
this,
going to be a public figure.
I know, but I just, and because it's going to be in the country, but I still think that she should have been a writer. She has a brilliant way with words, and I think that if she put pen to paper, she would do amazing things. And I do think
remember when we were talking about Colin being afraid for Penn and like what it looked like for a woman? And truthfully, somebody posted a thing about the Queen actually threatened to off Eloise in that carriage.
She did. Yeah.
When she was talking to her. So a woman could be executed, sent off to Australia. When we were having that conversation and we'd done that research, and I had found that one woman who she actually advanced a lot of healthcare for women and stuff like that at the time, and especially for women in prison. And she was very an open advocate. She did a lot of public speaking. I think they're going to make Eloise a lot like that, because Philip is they give me the dude they chose, and I can't think of his name right now. All I know is that he's Rob Cameron in Outland. They give him like, Professor Sir Philip to me. Like, he's very much a teacher, and I almost think they're going to be like, and they fashioned her after Josephine March in Little Women opens a school for anyone who wants to be educated that the regular school system at the time don't accept. So she took in children of color, she took in girls, and then young boys who might not have had access to education for whatever reason. She took them in, mostly boys in her school, but she still taught girls and everything else. And I think that that's what they're going to do. I think they're kind of going to have them be educators. She is going to probably do something for women's rights, or they're going to fashion her after that lady from the same time period, I think. And that's why we have the devs going, oh, you have a knack for public speaking.
Yeah, I need them to do more for her than what they did in the book. Julia Quinn did her really, really dirty in the books, that she was this amazing character. She was so interesting and she had so much going for her. And then they just had her be settled and content. And yes, there is a beauty in finding contentment in your marriage and in motherhood. And I mean, I am a stay-at-home mum, so I'm not going to discount that. I love being at home with my son. I was a teacher, and I find absolute joy in being home with my son. So it's not me discounting that by any means, but she is someone who is very not career driven. But if she were a 2024
but
lady, she would be career driven.
Yeah, look at her situation though. She is fearful of childbirth. She is afraid of having children. And she knows that when we look at season 1, she believed you had to be married to have children. So she's anti-marriage. And look at how scared she kind of is, like scared and mad when she comes into the drawing room and she goes, how does one get with child? Yes. Apparently, I thought you had to be married. And apparently that's not even a requirement. Like she is so
what if it happens to me?
Yeah, she is so upset about it. She is so afraid that she's gonna sit on a settee that a man was sitting on and she's gonna get pregnant, because her whole thing is she doesn't want to have a child. And that's show Eloise. And I think because Marina married Sir Philip and has the twins, and they were born when she was married, and so her son is going to be the heir, Eloise doesn't have that pressure.
Yeah.
If she wants to tell him, I will raise your children, I will raise Marina's children, I don't want to have any of my own, I think Philip would let her do that. I don't know if that's how they're going to do it in the show, but I think that's kind of the path it looks like. I think it's the path it looks like, though. She's going to be a true feminist, but it's her trauma from her
I'm not opposed to her having children. I'm
not saying you are. I just think that's my thought process, because she goes into a situation. In the book, it's the same situation, but in the book, she wanted to be a spinster because she didn't want to do it the way the ton wanted it done. Right. Yeah. So when she found her love in her own way, she completely changed. She completely became that motherly, wifey. And she even told Penelope, she goes, it just, none of that matters anymore. Like, this is the whole issue in the book was that she didn't want to do it based on the rule book of a game she didn't even want to play.
So Sir Philip's brother was older. He technically got a girl pregnant before he had died, obviously. And then Sir Philip received his title because his brother died. But in the books, Michael wasn't waiting, but like the whoever it is that deals with these things was waiting to see whether Francesca was pregnant with a potential heir before giving Michael the title officially. So does that mean that once Sir George's child comes to age, that he would then take the title, and that therefore Eloise and Sir Philip aren't actually the titled ones, but just the parents to the heir, technically?
No, because they did not know about Marina. He married Marina to honor.
Okay, so they're just passing him off as his own.
Yeah, yes, because Marina and his brother created a child out of wedlock.
Okay.
He can't announce that. He can't say, I did this thing. Now, Eloise will find out, because see, the only people who know that's a thing at this point in time are the Featheringtons and Philip and Marina.
In the country, it wouldn't be known.
Well, and the Bridgertons know that Marina was pregnant. Yeah. But they don't know. The only ones that know that Philip was actually the brother of the father of the children is Daphne and the Featheringtons and Philip and Marina. Colin and the rest of them have no idea that the person she ended up marrying was the father of the children's brother. That can't get out. That wouldn't get out. Marina's already ruined, but in the end, I mean, Marina had probably the best life she could possibly get. It's even better than what she would have had with Colin, really.
Yeah. Because I don't think
for her children's sake.
I don't think she would have ever loved Colin. I don't think there was any difference between her marrying Sir Philip or Colin in her eyes. The only difference being is that she led a life with a lot more luxury and probably a lot more freedom from the ton. I think Marina would have been a lot more depressed within the ton rather than being in the country, because in the ton she would have still had a lot of the societal pressures that she shunned Portia for having.
Mm-hmm.
for trying to thrust upon her. And I think she hated the ways of the ton and its restrictedness, having grown up in the country as a probably untitled.
And
I don't think she
I
was raised
think
in
like
gentry at all.
as much as we hate seeing Colin like ruminate over her and his part in that whole thing and him feeling guilty over it, we had to see Marina because this is kind of her downward trajectory. Like
Hmm.
she's very angry. She's an angry person. She's not happy. There's no fantasy. There's no imagination. I don't even want to necessarily use the word depressed, but remember, like she felt so guilty for even a moment that she could
Yeah.
believe what Portia said that George abandoned her.
Yeah.
And I think that where Colin goes and he confronts his guilt and he goes to see her just to make sure she landed on her feet. And then he has that conversation with Penn outside the Modiste, like, why did you do this? You were also part of, and this is your family. He just wants her thought process because
Yeah.
when there's a conflict, when there is a feeling, Colin is very emotionally intelligent and he processes those feelings. He goes and plays sad boy laying in his bed thinking about it, but he processes those feelings. And Marina doesn't. Marina
Yeah.
is the antithesis to him in terms of emotional intelligence. She takes this guilt of not having faith in the man that she loved, and that eats away at her. And I think that's going to play into how she is no longer there.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait to see how they play that out because honestly, they could go in a number of ways. But for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode where we will finish off season 3 side stories with part 2 of Hawkins Innovations Ball. I knew that there was absolutely zero way that we were going to get through today's episode without it being honestly like a 3-hour long episode. I've got to get my little boy to bed very shortly. Patty's got to go pick up her not so little boy. We are busy ladies and we know how to tangent with the best of them. So, we will leave it there for this week. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening.
And Luke Newton, if you took my invitation to come listen to us from me posting on your Instagram today, hello, welcome. We do love you here. And once again, thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women.
Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.
Oh, side note, I bought a little duck decoration for my Christmas tree for Ezra because now I need to find a swan. The end.